Hello and welcome back to the podcast, Carissa. It's such a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you, Rechelle, for having me. I am so honored to be here with you again.
Oh, it's so fun, and we learned so much from you last time, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But here, let's find out a current show that you're watching. What are you watching these days? Anything good?
Listen, I think we are in a time and an age and that a lot of people, everything is so fast that I find it so hard to pay attention to one thing.
Yes.
So the show that I watch the most, this is my guilty pleasure. I'm so sorry.
Don't
But
be
I
sorry.
watch it, I watch it on repeat is Sex and the City.
Okay. Well, you're not
Like,
the first person to say that. I think
okay.
somebody else said that too. So you're in good company that way. And so you watch it on repeat, so you enjoy it.
Yes, I want like the season finishes and I just go back to the first season and again and again and again. I just love it. I don't know. And I
Yeah,
don't have to pay attention to it entirely because I
right.
kind of know already what's happening. So, you
That's
know.
good. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so good. And I think there are shows like that that we go back to. Like I go back to Seinfeld. I go back to, oh, The Office, some of those
Yes.
comedies that are just so tried and true and fun. All right,
Yes,
tell
totally.
me, who was your crush growing up? Who was your crush?
Oof, that is a tough one. Who was my crush? I was thinking about that question and I think maybe it was like Zac Efron or something. I don't know.
Okay, that's a,
Because of High School Musical, I
oh,
don't know.
yes,
Yeah, maybe
yes.
it
No,
was him.
yeah, well, that's a good crush to have. That is a good crush to
Yes.
have. Yeah,
Yes.
and
He's
that
still
was,
very handsome. Not my crush anymore, but he
yeah,
is handsome.
yeah. And
Yes.
that was a very fun musical in its time.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun, very fun.
Totally.
Okay, what's something you're most afraid of? And you can go like light and irrational or whatever you want.
I think, and this is not, like superficial level at all what my answer is
Sure.
going to be. I think my biggest fear is watching the people I love transition into a different type of, form of life. So passing away and me having to experience that here.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
That,
Yes.
yeah, like I can't, that is very hard to even think about. Like
Yes.
yeah, no. I think that is my biggest fear, just to watch, I'm very close to my brother and my dad and just to think about that. I remember when my grandma passed away, I was, oh, not a good feeling. And I guess a lot of people have that fear, but that is definitely having to be here and experience that. That is hard. Oh,
It
no.
is because, we're going to miss them. And that,
Yes.
that the sorrow is equal, I think, to the love we have for them. So sort of the more you love that person, the more sorrow I think you're going to feel at their
Yeah.
loss if they go before, if they go before you do. And I understand completely. And it's not, in fact, the other day I was talking to a friend and both her parents have passed on. And I was, saying, oh, when my mom passes on, that's gonna be so. She goes, no, 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 no. Right now, she's here right now. Don't even go there
Yes.
yet. Just don't go
Yes.
there yet. I was like,
Totally.
okay, okay, that's good advice. Why go there yet? We don't need to. We don't need to.
Yes.
Okay.
Live here on the now.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, just now, exactly.
Hmm.
What's a random fact most people would not know about you?
A random fact. Ooh. Mm. I think a lot of people don't know a lot about me because I don't put it out there. I don't know. Something
Well,
people
then
don't
that
know.
this will be easy then. This will be easy.
I know. I think I don't know what to tell you. I think what can it be? Maybe that I went through, and I think we're gonna go into it in more depth, what I'm
Right.
about to say. But maybe that I had my season of depression and just knowing that it was a very hard time in life and thinking that maybe I wouldn't make it through and I'm still here. That is something that I
Right.
don't talk about that much. or just randomly to anyone.
Right, right.
So maybe that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought up something that can be hard for people to talk about. I hope that we're getting better at talking about those things, the mental health, mental wellness side of life. You know,
Right.
there's been so much shame and what have you associated with it years and years and years ago. And I think we're coming out of that more and more and more as people talk about it, as we realize and recognize that you know, people do go through that. Not, of course, not everyone, but many do. And so to be
Yes.
able to be authentic and say, hey, I struggled with that. And I sometimes struggle with it still, that is real. And I think other people can relate and like, oh, you too, you know, you start to feel less alone. So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Yes, for sure.
All right. What advice would you give your 10-year-old self? I love age 10, 11, the fifth grade. That's like was my sweet spot as a teacher. So what advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
I think I would tell my 10-year-old self to embrace the good moments that are happening around that time, to just enjoy life as much as she can, because life does get harder. Like like I know it's like uh I don't know if it's the best advice, but
No,
definitely just make sure you are cherishing and enjoying those good moments that you get to have when you're that age, because even though it seems like, the world is crumbling on top of your shoulders and everything, you still don't know exactly what it means to be in this world. And
right, right.
so yeah, just life gets harder so when you as you grow. So
And we don't realize that when we're that age,
yes.
we don't realize that because the stuff to us when we're that age seems so big and seems so hard. And then when we get more in the adult years, we, oh my
Yeah, you
God.
realize, you're like, oh my God, I didn't have that many responsibilities as I have now. And I was still, suffering, or just, yeah, just
Yes,
taking
so
everything too
true.
personal. And
Yes,
just, yeah.
absolutely. Gosh, so true. All right. Well, those are the questions that we'd like to give our second time guests. You've been on the show before. Like I said, we learned a lot from you. Let's talk about grief. Can you tell us about a time of grief that you experienced?
Grief is probably a topic that I feel maybe it has been in my life for many years, in different aspects of my life. When I was little, that my parents divorced, even though I didn't know that was grief, I
Right.
because I'm so little and I don't really know what that means. I think I was definitely grieving the fact that my parents split up, and there was a lot of drama in between when they split up too.
Right.
That my mom wanted to keep us, or and then my dad in Mexico and my mom in the States, and then she was off and on, and then a lot of things on my dad's side of the family too. So I feel like I talk about we because my brother and I lived, the same situation. We experienced it
Right.
differently, but I feel like that's my first introduction to grieving, and I didn't really know. And then years passed by, and I grew up probably mad. Like, I stayed in that
Oh,
stage of grief. I grew up mad about all the situations that I was encountering with my dad, and still with my mom, her not being entirely in the picture, but still I would get some moments with her. And so I feel like that's how it started for me.
right.
And 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 I still talk about it as a present thing, because for some reason I feel like my inner child still grieves the fact that I didn't grow up with a mom. So
Hmm.
my inner child still kind of, sometimes I find her very maybe sad, or this
Right.
type of way about that way that she grew up.
Hmm.
Um And that led a lot to my depression too. And I think it runs in my family too. The depression, mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I just went on
No, no,
to
no,
many
no.
different ways,
I
but
think there's really something to, genetic predisposition, and yes, certain things do run in families, and it's
yeah,
not like you chose that, you
yeah,
situationally, then on top of the predisposition, now you've got like almost the perfect storm going.
yes, totally. Yes, it's like, okay, you are already born with this, you're already born with this, and on top of it, you get to experience all these things that it's probably going to enhance it.
Right, exactly.
And I've
Exactly.
learned throughout the years how to manage it, how to manage depression or those lows, or those
Right.
highs.
Well, and I was going to ask you that because that was sort of the next question that came to me naturally. What have you learned now about, when you feel it coming on or you're in it,
Right,
like, oh my gosh, I'm in it again. I mean,
right.
what are some of the things that you've done that help you, either feel it and let yourself feel it and then move on from it,
You just
or
said it.
through it.
You just said it. You have to let yourself feel it. There's no, I don't, and this I recommend to everyone. You can't run away from it because you're gonna find yourself there again.
Uh,
So, and that did happen to me. Like I ran away from it, and life just put me back where I was supposed to be to go through it and work through it.
yeah.
And so what I've done, thankfully, I haven't gotten to a point again where I was really bad in a really bad mental state. Um, and that has been because of meditation. That's what helped me go through it and got me out of it. And I still get some, seasons where I'm in a low, but
Hmm.
because of all the stuff that I've studied, like meditation and, reading helps a lot, understanding how the brain works and what's happening inside of you. Nutrition is a huge part of it as well. Because of that, I haven't found myself back into that low where I can't get myself back up by
Right,
myself.
right, right, right.
So yeah, when it comes, I just go through it, and that is life. And I think I built a strong relationship with God, which I'm still working on, but that has helped a lot. Meditation and just being closer to God and knowing
Right.
that I'm not alone.
Right.
Yes.
Isn't there so much comfort in that, even when you are
Yes.
going through a really painful time, just like you're not alone. And when you allow yourself to not only feel the feelings, but then recognize that there's somebody, an entity that loves you and gets the pain that you're in and wants to
Yes.
encourage you through it and then out of it when it's time.
Yes. Yes, totally. That's been in this part of my life, recent years, probably the last 2 years, that's been a huge thing. Just being, in constant communication with God, my conversations with God during the day, being, grateful for the good and the bad, because that has led me to where I am right now. And
Mhm.
just understanding how we're all human beings and we're all, working through something. And that's helped me understand my parents, per se. Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's such a revelation, isn't it? When you realize when you get to whatever age you're at, and it's not like a magic number, but you reach a point and now you've got some life experience under your belt and you realize, oh my gosh, my parents definitely didn't give me everything I wanted and needed. They did the best they could do
With what they had.
with
Yeah.
what they had.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Correct.
Yes, and it's very freeing. I found when I reached that, and I think I was started that process in my 20s when I realized, wow, okay, they're people, they're human, they fell short in this way or that way, but
Hmm.
now I'm responsible to get the rest of what I want and need in my brokenness,
Correct.
what have you.
Correct. I love that what you just said, because when you realize that now it's my responsibility to get what I need to hold that space for what my inner child needed,
Right.
there comes another beast, I think, because when you realize that, you can have a lot of compassion and empathy for your parents, which is great, and you can understand their side of the story and that they did what they could with what they had. But then you realize that, and you are actually holding that space for yourself. And with that comes, um, what's the word? Boundaries.
Oh, yes.
And people don't like boundaries. So there's another piece right there, because some people are, they're used to getting away with with something they want from you. But when you are finally realize it, you're like, oh, okay, you don't have to give it to me. Like, I don't have to demand it from you. You couldn't. And that I'm gonna be more specific. Of course, my parents.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, no, you don't have to give it to me. I have empathy. You did what you could, and I thank you, and I thank God for my experience. That's why I'm here. And now that I know it, I'll hold this boundary, because this is what my inner child needs and what I need as an adult. And that can create a problem between those
Yeah.
relationships that you have.
Right.
But I think, you live and you learn. You start understanding, how can I set a boundary without maybe hurting someone's feelings? And if I'm doing it as respectful, as being as much loving that I can, but still setting the boundary.
Yes.
And maybe they don't get it in the moment. At some point,
Yes.
hopefully they do. And if they don't, well, they don't. I mean, you
Yes. And
know,
at that point, that's not your responsibility
exactly.
for them to get your boundary.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Oh
It's a
my
very
God.
interesting dynamic, to be honest. And how I just said about my parents and understanding them and having empathy for them. That sounds really nice, what I just said. It sounds amazing. When you get to a certain age and you understand now, oh yeah, I understand my parents and you and I and now. But the truth is, it's such a hard task to accomplish. And I do find myself back and forth with it. Sometimes my inner child just comes out and she's like, no, I'm mad. I'm still mad, And
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm like, okay, Carissa, okay, I get you, I understand, but then how can I harmonize the situation between my inner child, what she wants, what she needed, and the grief that she still holds on to, and then my relationship with my parents, and like,
Right.
so it's been an interesting one. It's not an easy one. You do
No,
understand a lot of things, but yeah, that's
but
life.
it's so worthwhile though. But don't you think it's very worthwhile? I mean, what's the alternative to just sit and stew and be resentful and full of bitterness and
Nothing. It doesn't
toxicity?
serve you at
No,
all.
it doesn't
You're the
serve you
only
at
one
all.
suffering. Yes.
Yes, exactly. What what would you what advice would you give for somebody to sort of cultivate? It sounds like you've become really thankful through this experience. What advice what are you grateful for having had this experience? What have you learned? I mean, moving forward, how would you advise somebody to sort of find gratitude?
You know, when when I hear that people say, "Oh yeah, I'm grateful for my experience. I would do it all over again to land here." I wouldn't. I'm going
Yeah,
to be honest with you. I would not. I
right.
I I went through it. Great. I've learned from it. I'm still learning from it. I've got I've gotten out of it in some sense, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Just the experience you get from everything you live. But I would not go through it again. And life doesn't get easier, but you get greater at it. You get you start to pick and choose your battles, and
Right.
that is being smart. And what would I advise to someone going through a grief season, or just something that happens harsh in
Right.
their life? Definitely don't run from it. You
Mhm.
have to, don't be ashamed for feeling it. Don't run from it, because you will find yourself back there, even if you don't want to. Life will put you there until you go through it, until you work on it. Because
Right.
I did want to run from it at some
Oh,
point, and I
yeah.
did run from it. I moved from the city I grew up, and I ended up going back. Like,
Wow.
I ended up going back exactly where I felt the most sorrow and fear and anger and all these things. And from there, I healed. And like I said, it's a nonstop,
Oh, it's so
work. But
ongoing, so
yes,
ongoing.
it's
Yeah.
ongoing. But it definitely, life put me there again. Like, it just took me back to that point where I had to heal a lot of things, a lot of relationships too.
Right.
So
Well, I'm
I
so
would
glad you
definitely
went
say that.
back. I'm glad you went
Yes.
back because it's important work to do. And I think that's part of why we're here. And like you said, you wouldn't want to go through it again. I wouldn't sign up for some of the sorrowful things I have felt, seasons I have had. And yet they're still there and you still have to get through them.
Yes, yes. I wouldn't go through it again, but I am grateful where I'm at right now. Like, I am grateful where I have landed in life, which is Maui, singing, and all these things that are so, I can't believe this is my life sometimes. Like, I'm like, oh my God, my life was such a different story growing up. And
Right.
now I'm here with my brother, and it just feels, like there's there's a lot of joy surrounding us, a lot of calmness, and just peaceful. It's just crazy how life switches for you.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
and you've been intentional with wanting to change it, to do the hard work,
Yeah.
to go there, and then, to land geographically in a place that really promotes peace and joy and
Yes.
contentment and being in the present. It just it is those things for sure.
Yes. Yes.
What about gratitude? How, if you were going to advise somebody how to find gratitude or to be grateful, what would you say?
I think I think to get to a place of gratitude, to get to a place mentally, emotionally, to a place where you actually feel grateful for everything that has happened in your life. Like
Mm-hmm.
I said, you definitely need to go through that darkness and that bitterness. I think that's a step. That's a huge step for that sweet spot that you want to find yourself in, which is in gratitude and gratefulness. And that right there is God. So
Yeah.
I think the faster you can get from anger and sadness and grief to that place of having a conversation with God and saying, thank you, God, for these moments. I know they're very hard, and I feel very awful, and I feel angry, and I feel this, and that. At the same time, you're implementing that conversation with that higher power. It comforts you, and they
Mhm.
kind of coexist together in
Right.
that moment.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lot about personality too. Some people want to stay angry for some time. And
Yes. I think we've all met people like that, right?
yes, and so they go through life just being angry at everything and anything, and just, and
Yeah.
everyone.
And
So
yeah, it's so sad. It's like, come on,
yes,
it
you're
doesn't have
because
to
you're
be this
wasting the
way.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this way.
exactly.
Wow. Well, I like that circular thing of going from a place of darkness that, you know, working toward going through it and working toward the sweet spot and being real with God. I mean, he already knows, but being real
Exactly.
with him and saying, these are the things I feel, this is what I'm thinking. Ah, you know,
I
being
feel like,
that.
yes, I feel like a lot of times, I think right now, I feel like there is a type of toxic positivity where I hear a lot of just be thankful, just say yes that you're grateful, blah blah blah, and it will go away. But at the same time, you do need to express the darkness that you have inside, and then at the end of that narrative say, okay, thank you God, thank you for listening. Yes, you know I'm going through this and it hurts and I'm just in pain and all these things. And then at the end, just, but I know you're here with me and I know you'll get through it with me, and that's it,
Right,
like I know we'll get through this.
right, right.
And not just avoid it, not just, say,
Yeah,
yeah, everything's gonna be okay, and yeah, everything's gonna be okay, but at the same time, you do need to feel what you're feeling and not feel
right,
sorry about it. Like if you
right.
like you can't just cover that in roses and say, oh yeah, yeah, God will provide, but you
Yeah,
also need to
yeah.
do the work. And
Yes, you
yes,
need to do the work.
yes,
Yes,
you
yes.
need to put in the work for sure.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. Wow. Is there anything else you want to say in conclusion? This has been just a wonderful conversation. I feel so
Oh, thank
inspired.
you. Thank you. I don't know. I don't think so. I think I've said it.
Okay.
A lot of things that I've said, I think a lot of it I'm going through it again, but
Right.
not in such a deep way that I did in my
Right.
depression phase. But I am applying all these things that I'm saying right now, like I wake up and I have my conversations with God, and then I have moments where I'm like, oh my God, why is this being too heavy right now? And I can't, and or all these things. And then I go back to God again. Like, thank you,
Right.
God. We got through this day. Thank you.
Yes, and that's
Yes,
real. And that's
yes,
real. Right.
yes.
Wow, very good. Where can people find you if they want to like hear your music or
Instagram, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube as Carissa Santana Music. That's how you can find me.
okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Well, thank
Mm-hmm.
you. What just a pleasure it's been to have you on again. And once again,
Oh, thank you.
I've learned a lot from you and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.